My name is Sophia Bennett, and for 32 years my family branded me the failure, the dreamer who'd never amount to anything. Picture this. I'm at a glitzy tech gala in Seattle, tucked away at a corner table, invisible in my plain black dress. Across the room, my brother Michael, the golden child, schmoozes with the city's elite. He's the right-hand man to Ethan Caldwell, the billionaire CEO of a tech empire. Nobody notices me, until Caldwell himself walks over, his eyes widening like he's seen a ghost. "Wait," he says, voice low. "You're Congresswoman Bennett?" Michael's face across the ballroom goes white as a sheet, like his whole world just crumbled. Years of my family's lies, their whispers that I'd never make it, explode in that one moment. If you've ever been written off by the people who should have had your back, stick with me. Hit subscribe, drop a comment about where you're watching from, and let's dive into how being underestimated became my greatest strength. Growing up a Bennett in Seattle meant something. Our family software company was a titan, our name plastered on skyscrapers and charity galas. My parents, Charles and Victoria, had a blueprint for success: code at MIT, climb the tech ladder, marry into the right circles, and never, ever rock the boat. Michael? He was their poster boy, charming, brilliant, a natural at playing their game. Me? I was the odd one out, always asking why. While Michael debugged software at 16, I was nose-deep in books about politics and social justice. My parents called it a phase, a cute little rebellion they figured I'd outgrow. But I wasn't rebelling, I was searching for something real, something beyond their world of algorithms and stock options. Every time I questioned their empire, I saw it in their eyes: disappointment. To them, I wasn't just different, I was a liability. And that night at the gala, when the truth came crashing down, I realized just how far they'd gone to keep me in the shadows. That moment at the gala, when Ethan Caldwell's words turned my brother Michael's face ghost white, wasn't just a shock, it was the climax of a 32-year battle. My family's whispers, their constant refrain that I'd never measure up, had built a wall between us. But to understand how I got to that corner table, invisible yet about to rewrite their story, you need to know where it all began. Growing up a Bennett in Seattle wasn't just about wealth, it was about power. Our family software company, Bennett Innovations, was a giant, its logo gleaming on skyscrapers, its influence woven into every tech startup in the Pacific Northwest. My parents, Charles and Victoria, didn't just run a business, they ran a dynasty. Their mansion on Capitol Hill, with its floor-to-ceiling windows and private elevator, was a stage for their carefully curated life. And they had a script for us kids: ace computer science at MIT, join the company, and keep the Bennett name untarnished. My brother Michael? He was their star. At 16, he was coding algorithms that made Dad's eyes light up. Handsome, sharp, with a knack for charming investors, Michael was the heir they'd always dreamed of. When he won a national coding competition, Mom threw a black-tie dinner for 200 guests, toasting his limitless future. Me? I was the glitch in their system. I didn't care about code or stock options. I'd sneak away from Michael's tech demos to read about civil rights, campaign finance reform, anything that explained why the world worked the way it did. I'd ask Dad why Bennett Innovations dodged taxes while schools in our city crumbled. His answer was always a tight smile and a lecture about business realities. Mom called my questions childish idealism, insisting I'd grow out of it. But I wasn't just curious. I was hungry for something bigger, something that mattered beyond profit margins. By high school, the divide was clear. Michael's straight A's earned him a new Tesla. My report cards, just as good, got a nod and a sigh. When I joined the debate team instead of the robotics club, Mom's eyes rolled so hard I thought they'd fall out. "Debating's for lawyers, not Bennett's," she said, as if I'd betrayed the family crest. Every choice I made, every book I read, every question I asked widened the gap. They didn't just want me to succeed, they wanted me to succeed their way. The tension wasn't subtle. At family dinners, Michael's internships at tech giants were the main course, while my passion for policy was barely an appetizer. "Sophia's off in her little dream world," Dad would say, waving his hand like I was a phase to be endured. Mom's favorite line? "You'll come around when you see how the real world works." Their disappointment wasn't loud, it was cold, cutting, the kind that sinks into your bones. I wasn't rebellious, not really. I just couldn't fake enthusiasm for a life that felt hollow. By the time I hit 17, I knew I'd never fit their mold. But I also knew something they didn't. I was building something of my own, piece by piece, question by question. That gala, where Caldwell's words shattered their narrative, was still years away. But the seeds of it? They were planted in those early days, when I chose to be the odd one out, the Bennett who dared to dream different. Those early years in the Bennett household, where my questions about justice were brushed off as childish, set the stage for a fight I didn't see coming. The gala moment, Ethan Caldwell's stunned recognition and Michael's pale shock, was the explosion, but the fuse was lit long before, in the quiet battles that shaped me. By high school, the gap between me and my family wasn't just wide. It was a canyon. Michael was their golden ticket, coding apps at 16 that landed him internships with tech giants, while I was the oddball, sneaking off to read about voter suppression or corporate lobbying. My parents, Charles and Victoria, didn't just favor Michael. They built their world around him. His every achievement, a hackathon win, a scholarship, meant another gala or a write-up in the Seattle Times. Me? I could ace a history exam or win a debate tournament, and all I'd get was a tight smile and a "that's nice, dear." But it wasn't nice. It was a signal I didn't fit. The real trouble started in my junior year at Lakeside School. Our civics teacher assigned a project on a local issue, and while most kids pick safe topics like traffic laws, I dove into the ethics of artificial intelligence, specifically how companies like Bennett Innovations were automating jobs, leaving thousands unemployed without retraining programs. I spent weeks in the library digging into data, interviewing laid-off workers, even emailing policy experts. My presentation was airtight. 20 slides, backed by stats showing how tech giants profited while communities crumbled. I got the only A+ in the class. But when a classmate's dad, a venture capitalist tied to our family's firm, mentioned my project at a country club brunch, all hell broke loose. That night, Dad stormed into the living room, his face red as a sunset. "You're humiliating us in front of our investors," he roared, pacing the hardwood floor. "Do you know what your little stunt could cost us?" I tried to explain, my research was factual, the numbers didn't lie. But Mom cut me off, her voice ice cold. "Sophia, there's a difference between truth and what's appropriate. You need to learn it." Appropriate? I was 17, staring down my parents' empire, and all they cared about was how I made them look. My project wasn't just a school assignment. To them it was treason. They demanded I withdraw it from the district competition. I refused, and that refusal became a line in the sand. From then on, every move I made was a rebellion in their eyes. Joining the debate team instead of the coding club? A waste of time, Dad scoffed. Signing up for a summer program on civic engagement instead of a tech boot camp? You're throwing away your future, Mom said, her disappointment sharper than any knife. They didn't see my passion for policy as ambition. They saw it as defiance. Michael, meanwhile, sailed through, his path to MIT as smooth as the Puget Sound on a clear day. At family dinners, his stories of coding marathons were met with toasts, while my ideas about reforming tech regulations were met with silence or worse, Dad's dismissive, "Let's talk about something productive." By senior year, I wasn't just the odd one out, I was the enemy. But deep down, I was forging something stronger than their approval. A purpose. That purpose would carry me far beyond their expectations, straight to that gala where the truth would finally break free. The sting of that high school showdown, when my parents branded my AI ethics project as a betrayal, wasn't just a moment, it was a turning point. It carved the canyon between me and my family deeper, setting the stage for the gala years later where Ethan Caldwell's shocked recognition would unravel their narrative. Back then at 17, I wasn't just fighting for a grade, I was fighting for my right to think differently. My parents, Charles and Victoria, saw my refusal to pull the project as defiance, not principle. To them, I wasn't just questioning their company, I was questioning their entire world. Dad's red-faced fury and Mom's icy lectures about appropriateness made one thing clear: being a Bennett meant following their script, no exceptions. Michael, my brother, was their perfect actor, coding his way to MIT with a smile that never faltered. Me? I was the misfit, the one who'd rather debate policy than debug software. That tension between their expectations and my truth pushed me toward a decision that would change everything. By senior year, the pressure was suffocating. Michael had already locked an early admission to MIT, his future as a tech prodigy sealed with Dad's proud handshake and Mom's social media posts boasting about his limitless potential. I had the grades, the test scores, and the family connections to follow him there. Bennett Innovations had a pipeline to MIT with internships and scholarships practically guaranteed for me. But every time I thought about 4 years of computer science, my chest tightened. I didn't want to build algorithms, I wanted to build a better world. Late at night, scrolling through college websites, I found the University of Washington's political science program. It wasn't just good, it was world-class, with courses on governance, social justice, and policy reform that lit a fire in me. The campus was diverse, gritty, alive with ideas, nothing like the polished exclusivity of MIT. I knew it was where I belonged, but I also knew choosing it would be like dropping a bomb on my family. I waited until spring to tell them. We were in the dining room, the one with the chandelier that cost more than a car, eating salmon Mom had flown in from Alaska. Michael was home from his latest tech conference, regaling us with stories of meeting venture capitalists. I took a deep breath and said, I'm not applying to MIT. I'm going to the University of Washington for political science. The room went silent, forks frozen midair. Dad's face turned the color of a ripe tomato. You're what? He said, his voice low, like a storm brewing. Mom's wine glass hit the table with a clink. Sophia, this is a joke, right? She asked, her eyes narrowing. I shook my head, my heart pounding. It's not a joke. It's what I want. Dad slammed his hand on the table, making the crystal rattle. You're throwing away opportunities people would kill for, he shouted. MIT is a legacy, Sophia. Our family's name opens doors, and you're slamming them shut for some liberal pipe dream. I tried to explain, the program was rigorous, the faculty were pioneers, I'd still be in Seattle, but they weren't listening. Mom's voice cut through, sharp as glass. Political science? What does that even get you? A job handing out flyers for lost causes. Dad piled on, his words like punches. This isn't just about you. It's about generations of Bennetts who built this company, this life for you. You're spitting on that. I felt my throat tighten, but I held my ground. I'm not spitting on anything, I said, my voice shaking. I'm choosing my own path. Mom laughed, a cold, brittle sound. A path to nowhere, she said. Michael, usually quick with a charming deflection, just stared at his plate, avoiding my eyes. The silence that followed was heavier than any argument. That night, Dad called me into his study, the one lined with mahogany and awards from tech summits. He didn't yell this time, which was worse. His voice was flat, final. If you do this, you're on your own, he said. No trust fund, no help with tuition, no safety net. You'll deal with the consequences. I nodded, too stunned to speak. Mom stood by the door, her arms crossed. We expected more from you, Sophia, she said, and walked out. I went to my room, locked the door, and cried, not because I doubted my choice, but because I realized how alone I'd be. The next morning, I found an envelope slipped under my door. It was from my grandfather, James, a retired engineer who'd always been quiet at family gatherings. Inside was a note in his shaky handwriting, dare to carve your own path. You're braver than they know. It was the only encouragement I got, and I clung to it like a lifeline. When I left for the University of Washington that fall, the family sent Michael off to MIT with a catered party for 50 guests. For me, there was nothing, no hugs, no good luck wishes, just Mom's tight-lipped, call if you change your mind. The campus was everything I'd hoped, vibrant, challenging, full of students who cared about ideas, not pedigrees. For the first time, I felt free, like I could breathe without someone judging every exhale. But freedom came with a price. Without my parents' support, I worked 2 jobs, waitressing at a diner and tutoring high school kids, to cover rent and books. My apartment was a 500-square-foot box with a leaky faucet, a far cry from the Capitol Hill mansion. Every month was a juggling act, pay the electric bill or buy groceries. I'd lie awake, wondering if Dad was right, if I'd thrown it all away. But then I'd go to class, dive into discussions about voting rights or environmental policy, and feel that fire again. I wasn't just learning, I was building something, even if my family couldn't see it. Meanwhile, Michael's star kept rising. His Instagram, which Mom shared religiously, showed him at MIT hackathons, Silicon Valley meetups, even a photo with Elon Musk. My parents' friends would stop me at the grocery store, their smiles pitying. Heard you're at UW, Sophia. Still time to transfer to somewhere, better you know. I'd smile, bite my tongue, and keep moving. They didn't know I was already planning something bigger than their tech dynasty, a dream not just to study politics, but to change the system from the inside. That dream was still a seed, fragile but growing, and it would lead me far beyond their expectations, straight to that gala where the truth would finally break through. The University of Washington was my escape, a place where I could chase my passion for politics without my family's shadow looming over me. That choice, to reject MIT and my parents' blueprint, set me on a path that would lead to that gala where Ethan Caldwell's stunned, "You're Congresswoman Bennett?" would shatter years of their dismissal. But back then at 18, I wasn't thinking about galas or vindication. I was just trying to survive. Choosing my own path meant losing the Bennett safety net. No trust fund, no tuition help, no calls from mom to check in. Dad's words, "You're on your own," echoed every time I paid a bill. My grandfather James's note, "Dare to carve your own path," was my only tether to the family, tucked in my wallet like a talisman. Those first years were a grind, but they forged me, step by scrappy step, into someone my parents never saw coming. Life at UW was a revelation. My classes on constitutional law, voter rights, urban policy, felt like oxygen after years of holding my breath. Professors didn't care about my last name, they cared about my arguments. For the first time, I wasn't the oddball, I was just a student with ideas. But freedom came with a price tag. My 500 square foot apartment in the U District had peeling paint and a radiator that clanked like a dying engine. I worked 2 jobs, waitressing at a 24-hour diner near campus and tutoring high school kids in civics. Between shifts, classes, and studying, I'd catch 4 hours of sleep if I was lucky. Groceries were ramen and day-old bagels from the diner. My budget didn't stretch to much else. Every month, I'd sit at my wobbly kitchen table, juggling rent, utilities, and a $60 phone bill, praying my math was right. Some nights I'd stare at the ceiling, Dad's voice in my head, a path to nowhere. Was he right? Had I traded a sure thing for a pipe dream? The answer came in my sophomore year when I stumbled into a political science seminar led by Sarah Nguyen, a former state senator who'd left office to teach. Sarah was a force, sharp, no-nonsense, with a knack for spotting potential. She called me out in class one day, challenging my take on campaign finance reform. I held my ground, citing data from a study I'd read. After class, she pulled me aside. "You've got a spark, Sophia," she said, her eyes steady. "But you need to trust your voice. It's stronger than you think." Those words hit like a jolt. No one in my family had ever said my ideas mattered. Sarah became my mentor, pushing me to dig deeper, argue smarter. She saw something in me I was only starting to see myself. Through Sarah, I got my first taste of real politics. I started volunteering for a local campaign. A city council candidate running on affordable housing. The work was unglamorous. Stuffing envelopes, knocking on doors in the rain, calling voters who'd rather hang up. But I loved it. For every 10 doors slammed in my face, there'd be one person who'd invite me in, share their struggles. Rent hikes, crumbling schools, jobs lost to automation. Their stories weren't abstract. They were the reason I'd chosen this path. My family didn't get it. At Thanksgiving, the one holiday I still showed up for, Michael's MIT stories dominated. He'd interned at a startup valued at $2 billion, and Dad toasted his game-changing work. When I mentioned my campaign volunteering, Mom's smile was thin. "That's quaint," she said, like I was playing pretend. Dad didn't even look up from his turkey. "Focus on something that pays, Sophia," he said. Michael, to his credit, tried to change the subject, but his pitying glance said enough. I left early, their dismissal burning hotter than the November chill. By junior year, I'd moved from volunteer to paid organizer for a state senate campaign. The pay was barely above minimum wage, $15 an hour, but it felt like a fortune. I learned the nuts and bolts of politics. Voter databases, canvassing scripts, rallying volunteers. Sarah coached me through it, teaching me that politics wasn't just ideals, it was strategy, grit, relationships. "Show up, do the work, and people will trust you," she said. I did. When our candidate won by a 300-vote margin, I felt a high no paycheck could match. We'd flipped a district that hadn't gone blue in 20 years. At the victory party, Sarah raised a glass to me. "You're going places, Sophia," she said. I believed her, even if my family didn't. Family gatherings grew harder. At my cousin's wedding, I overheard Mom talking to a friend. "Sophia's still doing her activist thing," she said, her tone dripping with pity. "We're hoping she'll come to her senses." My senses were fine. I was building a resume that would make any poli-sci grad jealous. By senior year, I was managing a city council campaign for a first-time candidate, a single mom who'd grown up in public housing. We ran on a shoestring budget fueled by coffee and conviction. When she won, the Seattle Post ran a story, "Grassroots Grit Triumphs." My name was in it, a small line about the tenacious young organizer. I sent the clipping to my parents, hoping for a flicker of pride. Mom's reply was a text, "Nice hobby. Have you considered grad school?" Dad didn't respond at all. Michael, home for Christmas, offered a half-hearted, cool article, but his eyes were on his phone, probably texting his startup buddies. Those rejections hurt, but they also clarified something. My family's approval wasn't coming and I didn't need it. I graduated with honors, a degree in political science, and a job offer from a nonprofit focused on voter access. The salary was $35,000 a year, peanuts compared to Michael's six-figure MIT grad offers, but it was mine. I moved into a slightly less awful apartment, still a far cry from the Bennett mansion. My days were long, writing voter guides, running registration drives, speaking at community centers. The work was exhausting but electric. I was helping people, real people, not stock portfolios, find their voice. Meanwhile, Michael's Instagram showed him in San Francisco, working for Ethan Caldwell's tech empire, living in a condo with a view of the bay. Mom's posts gushed about his meteoric rise. My work? Not a mention. At a rare family dinner, Dad asked Michael about stock options, then turned to me. Still playing activist? He said, smirking. I swallowed my retort and left early, vowing to prove them wrong. Not for their sake, but for mine. That vow would carry me far, through battles they couldn't imagine, to that gala where their lies would finally collapse. The grind of those early years at the University of Washington, juggling jobs and campaigns while my family dismissed my work as a hobby, built a fire in me that no rejection could extinguish. That fire would lead to the gala, where Ethan Caldwell stunned your Congresswoman Bennett, would force my brother Michael and our parents to face the truth they'd buried. But back then, in my early 20s, I wasn't dreaming of Congress or galas. I was just trying to prove to myself, not them, that my path mattered. My nonprofit job, organizing voter drives for $35,000 a year, was barely enough to cover my leaky apartment's rent. Mom's texts about grad school and Dad's smirks at family dinners stung. But Sarah Nguyen's mentorship and the thrill of a campaign win kept me going. Managing that city council race, seeing a single mom take office because of our work, showed me what was possible. That taste of impact wasn't just fuel. It was rocket fuel. It pushed me toward a leap I never saw coming. One that would shake my family's narrative to its core. By 24, I'd built a name in Seattle's grassroots scene. My resume, volunteer gigs, campaign organizing, voter outreach was solid, but I wanted more. Sarah saw it before I did. Over coffee at a Capitol Hill cafe, she leaned across the table, her eyes sharp. "You're not just an organizer, Sophia," she said. "You've got the instincts to lead. Why not run for office yourself?" The idea hit like a lightning bolt. Me, a candidate? I'd spent years behind the scenes, knocking on doors, crunching data. Stepping into the spotlight felt like jumping off a cliff. But Sarah's words stuck. I'd seen how policy could change lives. More buses for low-income neighborhoods, better funding for schools. Why not be the one making those calls? After weeks of late-night talks with my roommate, a barista with a knack for brutal honesty, I decided to run for Seattle City Council. District 2, a mix of tech bros and working-class families, was up for grabs. It was a long shot, but I'd never shied away from hard. The campaign was a beast. I had no money, no name recognition, and no Bennett family backing. My opponents included a real estate developer with $1 million war chest and a former council aide with union support. Me? I had a borrowed office in a strip mall, a team of 20 volunteers, mostly UW students, and a beat-up laptop. We ran on grit, door-knocking in the rain, flyering at bus stops, hosting town halls in church basements. My platform was simple but fierce: affordable housing, better transit, and tech accountability. I called out companies like Bennett Innovations for dodging taxes while renters struggled. Every speech, every debate, I poured in everything I'd learned, from Sarah's strategy tips to the stories I'd heard canvassing. Voters responded. At a community center meet and greet, a nurse grabbed my hand. "You get it," she said, eyes tired but hopeful. "You're not one of them." Them, the tech elite, my family's world. Her words were a lifeline. My family predictably scoffed. At a rare Sunday brunch, Mom sipped her mimosa and said, "City Council? Honestly, Sophia, it's a cute hobby, but you're out of your depth." Dad was blunter. "You'll lose, waste your savings, and embarrass us. Have you thought this through?" Michael, home from San Francisco, chimed in, his tone patronizing. "Politics is brutal, sophomore. It's not just passion, it's connections. You don't have those." I bit back a retort about his connections being Dad's Rolodex. Instead, I said, "I've got voters. That's enough." They laughed like I'd told a bad joke. Their doubt was a familiar ache, but it only made me hungrier. Election night was a blur. My team crammed into a dive bar, tracking results on my laptop. When the numbers came in, I'd won by 600 votes. The room erupted. Volunteers hugged me, beer spilled, someone blasted Springsteen. I stood there dazed, a 24-year-old nobody who'd just beaten the machine. The Seattle Times called it a grassroots upset. I felt like I'd climbed a mountain, but when I checked my phone, there was nothing. No texts, no calls from my parents or Michael. The silence hurt more than their words ever had. I went home, sat on my lumpy couch, and let the doubts creep in. Was this win enough? Would they ever see me? For the first time, I wondered if I'd been chasing a ghost, trying to prove something to people who'd never care. That doubt lingered until a week later, at a community forum I'd organized as a new council member. We were discussing transit funding, and after my talk, a kid, maybe 19 with a faded hoodie and a shy smile, approached me. "I gotta thank you," he said, shifting on his feet. "I never voted before. Didn't think it mattered. But you came to my apartment complex, talked about buses, jobs, stuff that affects me. I voted for you." Felt like my voice counted. His eyes shone with something I recognized, hope. I swallowed a lump in my throat. "It does count," I said. "You did that." He grinned, and in that moment the doubts vanished. This wasn't about my family. It was about people like him, people I'd sworn to serve. His words were a reminder. I wasn't just fighting for a seat. I was fighting for a world where everyone's voice mattered. My family didn't budge. A month later, Mom sent a curt email. "Congratulations, I suppose." The district must have been desperate. Dad didn't acknowledge it. Michael texted. "Nice win, small pawn though." Their dismissal was a knife, but it didn't cut as deep anymore. That kid at the forum, Sarah's belief in me, the voters who trusted me, they were my foundation now. I threw myself into the council, learning the ropes of budgets, zoning, coalition building. I sponsored a bill for rent control that passed by one vote, a win that got me a nod in the local paper. Slowly, I was becoming someone, not a Bennett but Sophia, the councilwoman who showed up. Meanwhile, Michael's star kept soaring. He'd moved up to chief of staff for Ethan Caldwell, the tech titan whose company rivaled Bennett Innovations. Mom's social media was a shrine to his penthouse, his TED Talk, his photo ops with senators. My council work? Not a peep. At a cousin's baby shower, Dad bragged about Michael's global impact while I stood there, holding a paper plate of cake, invisible. But I wasn't invisible to the voters, to the kid who'd voted for the first time. That was enough, more than enough, to keep me going. The council was just the start. Bigger fights, bigger stages were waiting. And when I stepped onto that gala stage years later, their lies about my failure would crumble under the weight of the truth. That city council win at 24, cemented by a shy kid's thank you at a community forum, was a spark that lit up my purpose. It wasn't just a seat, it was proof I could make a difference, even if my family, Charles, Victoria, and Michael, called it a fluke. Their dismissal, sharp as ever at that cousin's baby shower where Dad toasted Michael's tech triumphs while ignoring mine, only fueled me. Years later, at the gala where Ethan Caldwell stunned your Congresswoman Bennett, would unravel their lies, I'd stand tall because of moments like these. The council was my training ground, teaching me to navigate budgets, build coalitions, and fight for renters and workers. But it was also a stepping stone. The kids' words, my voice counted, echoed in my head, pushing me toward a bigger stage. I wasn't done proving what was possible, not to my family, but to myself and the people who believed in me. By 28, I'd made a name on the Seattle City Council. My rent control bill, passed by a single vote, got national attention in progressive circles. Local papers called me the policy wonk with a heart, a label I wore proudly. I'd learned to translate voter stories, nurses working double shifts, families priced out of apartments, into laws that stuck. Sarah Gwynn, my mentor, was still my North Star, texting me after big votes. Keep shaking things up. But the council had limits. Seattle's problems, housing crises, tech-driven inequality, needed bigger solutions, ones only Congress could tackle. When a U.S. House seat in Washington's 7th District opened unexpectedly after the incumbent retired for health reasons, Sarah called me. "This is your shot, Sophia," she said. "You're ready." The idea was daunting. A congressional race meant national scrutiny, big money, and opponents with deeper pockets. But I'd beaten the odds before. I said yes, the campaign was a beast unlike anything I'd faced. My opponents were heavyweights, a corporate lawyer bankrolled by tech firms and a former state senator with name recognition. I had my grassroots playbook, volunteers, door-knocking, town halls, but this time, the stakes were sky-high. We set up in a cramped office above a taco shop, with 15 volunteers and a budget that barely covered flyers. My platform, affordable housing, tech regulation, healthcare access, resonated with voters fed up with Seattle's skyrocketing costs. But the race got ugly fast. The lawyer, backed by firms like Bennett Innovations, dug into my past. A week before the primary, an anonymous blog dropped a bombshell. I'd allegedly leaked voter data during my nonprofit days. It was a lie, pure smear, but it spread like wildfire. Social media buzzed with hashtag Sophia scandal. My poll numbers tanked. Volunteers started bailing. I sat in my apartment staring at my phone, the accusations blurring through tears. For the first time, I thought about quitting. Sarah snapped me out of it. "This is politics, Sophia," she said over Zoom. "They're scared because you're real. Fight back with the truth." I took her advice. We called a press conference outside the taco shop office. Flanked by my team, I laid it all bare. The smear was fabricated, traced to a PR firm tied to my opponent. I showed emails proving my nonprofit's data was clean. "I'm not here to play dirty," I told the cameras, my voice steady. "I'm here for you, renters, workers, families who deserve a voice." The press ate it up. Local stations ran the story nonstop. The Seattle Times called it a masterclass in transparency. Voters rallied. My numbers rebounded, and we squeaked through the primary by 2,000 votes. The general election was tighter, but our ground game, 500 doors a day, calls till midnight, carried us. On election night, surrounded by volunteers in a community center, I watched the results. I'd won by 4,000 votes. At 28, I was Congresswoman-elect Sophia Bennett. The victory was electric, but my family's reaction was ice. I'd hoped foolishly that a congressional win might crack their armor. I texted Mom the news, attaching a Times article with my photo. Her reply, surprising. The district must have wanted a fresh face. Dad didn't bother responding. Michael, now Ethan Caldwell's chief of staff, sent a Slack message, "Congrats, big leap for a small-timer." Their words stung, but I was used to it. The real blow came at my swearing-in. I'd invited my parents, hoping for a gesture, anything. The only family there was Grandpa James, leaning on a cane, his eyes wet with pride. "You're rewriting the Bennett name," he whispered, hugging me. Mom and Dad's absence was a loud silence, a reminder of the cost of my path. In D.C., I hit the ground running, joining the House Committee on Education and Labor. I pushed bills for universal pre-K and tech worker protections, earning nods from colleagues for my homework. The press started calling me a rising star. But my family still saw a failure. At a rare Seattle visit, Mom said over coffee, "Congress is a big stage, Sophia. Don't embarrass us." Dad, reading the Wall Street Journal, muttered, "Stick to small stuff." Michael, visiting from San Francisco, was all smiles but no substance, bragging about Caldwell's latest IPO while ignoring my work. Their blindness hurt, but it also clarified my mission. I wasn't fighting for their approval anymore. I was fighting for the nurse, the kid, the voters who trusted me. That mission would carry me to the gala, where Caldwell's recognition would expose the truth. My family's narrative, that I was a dreamer doomed to fail, was about to collapse. Grandpa James's words, "You're rewriting the Bennett name," echoed as I prepared for the next battle, one that would shake their world more than any vote ever could. The congressional win at 28, forged through a vicious smear campaign and sealed by Grandpa James's quiet pride at my swearing-in, was a milestone I'd never imagined as a kid questioning my family's tech empire. That victory, built on grassroots grit and Sarah Nguyen's guidance, silenced the doubts my parents, Charles and Victoria, had planted with their dismissive, surprising, and Michael's condescending, small-timer jab. It set the stage for the gala where Ethan Caldwell's stunned "You're Congresswoman Bennett" would expose their years of denial. But back then, in my first term in D.C., I was focused on the work, pushing bills for education and tech reform, proving my seat wasn't a fluke. My family's absence at my swearing-in, their refusal to see my path as anything but a hobby, was a familiar ache. Yet that ache drove me to a moment where their narrative would collapse under the weight of truth in a room full of Seattle's elite. By 32, I'd carved a niche in Congress. On the House Committee on Education and Labor, I'd sponsor 3 bills that became law: universal pre-K funding, tech worker retraining, and transparency in AI contracts. Colleagues called me a policy bulldog. The Washington Post dubbed me a rising progressive star. I kept a low profile, avoiding cable news and focusing on substance over flash. My DC apartment was modest, a 1-bedroom with a view of a brick wall, a far cry from Michael's San Francisco penthouse. He was now Ethan Caldwell's chief of staff, a tech titan whose company rivaled Bennett Innovations. Mom's social media gushed about Michael's Davos trips in Forbes features, while my bills barely got a like. At a rare family call, Dad asked Michael about IPOs, then said to me, "Don't overreach in Congress, Sophia. Know your place." I hung up, their blindness no longer a surprise but still a bruise. The gala invite came in June, a cream-colored card for Ethan Caldwell's annual Tech for Good Gala, a glitzy Seattle fundraiser. Michael, as Caldwell's right hand, surely curated the guest list. Was this a trap, an oversight, or a calculated snub? I debated skipping it, but Sarah's voice echoed, "Show up, Sophia. You've earned your place." I chose a simple black dress, understated but sharp, and steeled myself for the Lion's Den. The venue, a downtown hotel with chandeliers and a view of Puget Sound, buzzed with 500 tech moguls, politicians, and donors. I was seated at a back table with a school superintendent and a biotech CEO, far from the head table where Michael held court beside Caldwell. He looked every inch the power broker, tailored suit, easy laugh, whispering to Caldwell like a consigliere. He hadn't glanced my way, though he knew I was there. I kept my head high, chatting with my table mates, but overheard whispers cut deep. "That's the Bennett girl, right? Such a shame with their family's name." After dinner, Caldwell took the stage, touting his foundation's work. I half listened, my mind on those whispers, until a hush fell near my table. Caldwell was approaching, his security trailing. He stopped, his eyes locking on me, confusion flickering before recognition hit. "Wait," he said, voice low but clear, "you're Congresswoman Bennett? The one who passed the AI ethics bill?" The table froze. Across the room, Michael's head snapped up, his face draining of color like a screen gone blank. I stood, extending my hand. "Yes, Mr. Caldwell," I said, steady despite my racing heart. "Pleasure to meet you." He shook my hand, his surprise shifting to interest. "Your bill's shaking up my industry in a good way. I had no idea you'd be here." The air thickened. Michael approached, his professional mask slipping, eyes wide with panic. Caldwell turned to him. "Michael, why didn't you mention Congresswoman Bennett was attending? We could have rolled out the red carpet." Michael stammered, "An oversight, sir." "My apologies." Caldwell's brow furrowed. "Bennett, you're related?" Before Michael could answer, I cut in smoothly. "He's my brother, Mr. Caldwell." Family dynamics can be complex. Caldwell, sensing the undercurrent, nodded. "Well, Congresswoman, let's talk soon. Your work's impressive." As he moved on, the room buzzed, eyes on us. Michael faced me, his voice low. "Sophia, I didn't know you'd..." I cut him off, calm but firm. "You've spent years pretending I don't exist, Michael. Why stop now?" His jaw tightened, but he had no reply. The gala's hum resumed, but the moment hung between us, heavy with years of silence. I'd walked in as the failed Bennett. I'd leave as Congresswoman Bennett, my truth undeniable. That truth would ripple beyond the ballroom, forcing my family to face what they'd buried for so long. That gala moment, when Ethan Caldwell's recognition exposed my truth and left Michael speechless, wasn't just a triumph. It was a reckoning. Years of my family's dismissal, Charles and Victoria's cold hobby jabs, Michael's silence, crumbled under the weight of Congresswoman Bennett. Leaving the ballroom head high, I felt lighter, unburdened by their narrative. But the ripples didn't stop there. Back in DC, I focused on my work, education reform, tech accountability, while Seattle buzzed with gossip about the Bennett siblings' clash. A week later, Michael texted, "Can we talk? I was wrong to stay quiet while they called you a failure." His apology, raw and unexpected, cracked open a door. I agreed to coffee, where he admitted envying my courage to defy the family script. It wasn't instant healing, but a start. Mom called next, her voice stiff. "We misjudged you, Sophia. Let's have dinner." Over salmon at their Capitol Hill mansion, they offered cautious praise. "Congress is impressive." "No, sorry, just a nod to my new status." It was imperfect, but I set boundaries, respect my path or lose me. Grandpa James at a quiet lunch revealed he'd once dreamed of activism but bowed to family pressure. "You're living my dream," he said, eyes misty. His pride mended old wounds. I learned my strength wasn't despite their doubt, but because of it. Being underestimated forced me to carve my own measure of success, impact, not wealth. Michael and I text now, rebuilding slowly. Mom tries, dad less so, but I'm done chasing their approval. My life, my votes, my voice is mine. That gala didn't just expose truth, it freed me to live it, unapologetically, for the people I serve. The tentative bridges built with Michael and my parents after the gala, where Ethan Caldwell's recognition shattered their failure label, marked a new beginning, not an end. Grandpa James's revelation, that my courage echoed his buried dreams, gave me closure. Their doubt hadn't broken me. It had forged me, turning underestimated into unstoppable. Back in D.C., I poured that strength into Congress, crafting laws for families and workers, my purpose clearer than ever. But this story isn't just mine. It's for anyone who's been told they're not enough. Have you ever been dismissed by those who should have believed in you? Maybe your family, like mine, pushed you to fit their mold. How did you push back? Drop your story in the comments. It might spark hope for someone else. Hit that like button, subscribe, and share this video with anyone who needs to hear that being underestimated can be their superpower. Here's the lesson I carry. Define success on your terms, even when the world doubts you. Don't wait for approval to chase what sets your soul on fire. This week, try this. Write down one goal that's truly yours, not someone else's expectation. Maybe it's a career shift, a bold idea, or just speaking your truth. Take one step toward it, no matter how small. That's how I started, questioning, then acting, then building a life aligned with my values. You can too. My path wasn't easy, but it led to a truth my family couldn't ignore. Yours can too. Let's keep this conversation going. Share your goal below, and I'll check in. Until next time, remember, true success isn't their applause, it's the courage to live authentically every single day.